Hi, my name is Damon Brown of DamonBrown.net. My goal is to help side hustlers, solopreneurs, and other non-traditional entrepreneurs like yourself bloom. I am one of you, and I'd like to help you on your journey. What we're going to talk about today are the three best money moves bootstrappers, entrepreneurs, people who are funding themselves, independents can do getting into the new year. Now, what I'm talking about, and as I'm talking right now, we're going into the new year. The next new year is going to be in a couple days. So I'm talking from a fresh experience, but this applies to any period of time during the year. In fact, a lot of these practices I put in the middle of the year, put them in the spring and the fall, New Year's, it doesn't really matter. But it's helped me create multiple streams of income and create a level of stability, even though I've been independent for quite a while now. The first one out of three, the first one is actually creating, again, multiple streams of income. Exclusivity, I can never get it out. Exclusivity is dead. It's over with. Don't do it. Back in the day when I first started as a freelancer, that was 1999 to 2000, when I became a full time freelancer. I just got out of grad school and I kind of went on my own back in Chicago right after I wrapped up Northwestern. And when you first start off as a freelance writer, which is what I'm talking about, but other type of independence too, a lot of stuff that you do is called work for hire. That means someone, a company, usually a conglomerate, whatever, will hire you and say, you're creating this specifically for us. That means you're going to get paid once, and then we can sell it multiple times. I discovered that with Playboy. That was one of my first major writing gigs, and they did some work for hire work, or I did some work for hire work for them. And so I would write a piece for them. I would get paid well because Playboy, they were a big magazine back in the 2000s, and then they could reproduce it in an anthology or whatever. If you caught any of my keynotes, I've told that whole story. No offense to Playboy, I worked with Hugh Hefner, rest in peace. Cool people, but they're still a conglomerate. That era is over. So anytime you can create something and then actually own what we call the IP, the intellectual property, hold on to it. And that means taking one thing, creating one thing, such as in my case, I originally, what I'm talking to you about right now, I also did this as an ink column. So if you go to inkdamonbrown.com, you can look this up and see that column. Because I own the rights to talking about this column, then I can have a video with you. If I have a keynote in this upcoming year, I can talk about this concept because I own the rights to that, not Ink Magazine, no disrespect to them. So I'm getting paid by them because I'm doing a column with them. I'm giving goodwill, for lack of a better term, and sharing this with you with this video series. And then I could share it in a keynote, which I might get paid, say, tens of thousands of dollars for. But I own that. And so creating multiple sources of income are a big part of that. And we'll get into that in the later steps. So number one, finding ways to multiply whatever you're creating. As my good friend Jeanette Hurt and I talk about in our book, the Passive Writer, which I think is somewhere on the bookshelf right there. Sorry, Jeanette, but it's The Passive Writer. You can go to thepassivewriter.com. We talk about getting out of the one and done. In other words, creating something and then finding multiple ways to repurpose it. Again, I'll get into that more with the second and third step. So the first step is to create multiple sources of income. It's a little bit smoother, and don't be intimidated by it. There's actually different ways that you can do that. And again, I talk about that in the ink columns, as well as I talk about that in the book with Jeanette Hurt, The Passive Writer, which is focused on journalism. So number one, you want to create multiple sources of income. That will help. Number two is to hold on to your IP, your intellectual property, no matter what, unless you're getting a ridiculous amount of money. And ridiculous, of course, is subjective. So whatever your version of ridiculous is. My version of a ridiculous amount of money back, 15 years ago, I wrote for a prominent publication and they wanted to own all the rights to everything I created, which again, like I talked about, is called work for hire. And I said, I will do that as long as you give me, like I asked for, end up being 25% more pay. And they said yes. And I got paid really well because they're already paying me well. They own the rights. Luckily, I didn't need to use it was writing, so it's like luckily I didn't need to use a writing in any other instance. I haven't had to since because I knew what kind of writing I was going to be writing for them, and I didn't want to share it in a book or do a keynote related to or anything like that. They got what they needed because then they just need to up my pay, and they were able to get the exclusivity. I was able to eat more. They were able to eat off my work, and so we have a lot of stuff going on as we speak with what's her name? I could see her face from Fleetwood Mac. the lead singer from Fleetwood Mac. No, no disrespect to Chrissy McVie. Oh, what's her name? She's actually one of my favorite singers, which is a shame. But her song "Dreams," which she wrote, Stevie Nicks, forgive me. Again, it's the end of the year, so my brain is going. With Stevie Nicks, she just sold her catalog, her masters. Whole different discussion. But she sold her masters, which means someone else owns the rights to how her music is distributed, and she got a mess load of money. I'm thinking 8, 9 figures for that, as she should. Same thing for Bob Dylan. Same thing, reportedly for Lil Wayne, who's more of a rapper from my generation. A lot of the older folks who are closer to my mother or even my grandmother's generation are selling their masters, but they're getting them sold, and they're getting $200 million. Now, over the course of time, that might end up being a bad decision because when you own your masters, that means you get royalties whenever someone wants to use your stuff. They're not going to get as many royalties or have as many opportunities as they would if they kept their masters or their IP. Masters is a version of IP in the music world. However, they made that conscious decision because they got a mess load of money. Like I said, a lot of them are in my, say, grandmother's generation, and most of my grandmothers have passed away. And so they might only have a limited amount of time where they're going to need that much money. All that said, they got a mess load of money and they're able to give away their stuff. However, a lot of us as independent creatives are giving away our stuff and then we're not getting that money, which is a shame because we need to pay a bill or get this and that done. And I've had rough times. I continue to have my ups and downs. I am with you with that. However, I still own the IPs to most of the books that you see up there. I didn't start off like that. I started off doing the work for hires because I needed to get in the game. But at a certain point, I jumped off and actually created my own book imprint. So all the books that I've done that you might know me best for as far as my business books, whether it's the Ultimate Bite-Sized Entrepreneur, Bring Your Worth, the one from a couple years ago, or the new one that's releasing within the next few weeks, Build From Now, How to Know Your Power, See Your Abundance, and Nourish the World. All those, I own the IP to those. And so whatever I want to do. And we'll get into that in number 3 and why that's important. Again, holding on to your IP because as many people who are much wiser than me as far as with understanding the law and the direction that things are going, they know that IPs are going to become more powerful, which is why as I'm talking right now, there's so many corporations that are grabbing these IPs and throwing money at these really successful independent artists or creators who own their masters. There's a reason why they're giving them so much money. It's not out of the charity of their heart because they're great singers. They know how much valuable that 200 million that they're shooting over to Stevie Nicks. No offense to her, but that 250 million they're giving her, they know it's going to be worth, say, $1 billion within the course of my lifetime since I'm a little bit younger than her. Food for thought. So number 1, you want to make sure you have multiple sources of income, which I'll get to in a second. Number 2, you want to make sure that you own your IP or keep it, which as soon as you create something, you got that IP. Someone has to come to you and say, I want the IP, and you have to sign a contract for them to take it. Or if you're going to give it away, then make sure it's for a significant amount of money. There's a couple books that I've done, some of them are on the shelves, that were works for hire, or I gave away the IP for that. But I got paid, I think in one case of a book, I got 50% more or so of an advance, but it was a work for hire, which made perfect sense at the time. It was a good amount of money. I think the most amount of money I made on a book up front, call it the advance, the most amount of money I had made at that period of time. It made sense. They got their rights. I might have missed out on some royalties, but I needed it at the time, and it made everyone happy, even though there was a little bit of a compromise. So number 2, don't give away your IP unless you're getting a mess load of money based on that mess load where you're at right now. Again, the decisions I made in the past would not be decisions I'll make now, but that's where I was at. So you got to forgive yourself for whatever decisions you made based on where you're at. Number 3, perhaps the most important thing is to make sure that you create partnerships and bridge different ways to create. I talk about this because for quite a while I was a lone wolf, and I was independently trying to create books and doing all these other things. And I'd say around the time of my second to last book, Bring Your Worth, which came out about 2 years ago. I appreciate all the support when it came out in February of 2019. I started collaborating more. So I actually worked with my cover designer, as well as my partner / wife, who's good with the crafts, ended up doing Bring Your Worth mugs, which, are tasty. I've had some whiskey in there. turns out really well. I do have the mugs available at damonbrown.net if you want to come through and grab yourself a mug. So I started doing the mugs. I actually worked with Purple Fluorite, also known as Raymond Johnson, who's a producer. We've been super close for years. He started producing a handful of years ago, and I just reached out and I was like, "You want to do a song?" And so we actually came up with the Bring Your Worth theme song. It's hashtag Bring Your Worth. Go on any of the major music providers and you can download Bring Your Worth, hashtag Bring Your Worth, all one word, featuring Damon Brown. And it's his music and it's my words from my book, Bring Your Worth. So I have an official theme song. And so as I've started to do keynotes and even connecting with you on video, and you get my latest audiobook for Build From Now, which is actually hitting the stores very soon. You grab that and you'll hear it in the background. But then I also lent my voice to the song that he made. And so he's doing that. We're showing our audiences to each other and we're both eating off of it. I'm selling the Bring Your Worth audiobook with the theme song, as well as the upcoming Build From Now, which will be out January of 2021. He's eating off of hashtag Bring Your Worth featuring Damon Brown. That's actually on his album. I forget the name of the album, but we released it as a single, and then it's also part of the album as a bonus track. So he's eating off of both of those. So you connect with that on Spotify or whatever. And then we have our special deal so that once he hits a certain amount of streams, or if I have hit a certain amount of things sold on the audiobook, then we pay each other a certain amount. So it's almost like a revenue share. But we're exposing each other to different audiences. No one knew who he was in my audience, including Inc. Magazine and all the other guys. And then his audience didn't know who I was, including, the major DJ sets, the producers, the emotive music that he creates, and all the different ways that you can define the music that he does. Excellent music. You can actually find his stuff at purplefluorite.basecamp.com. I'll throw it into the links. But really good stuff. That collaboration is shared resources. It didn't take any more energy for me to shoot him the acapella of my audiobook when I did it 2 years ago, and for him to splice it up and do amazing stuff with it. It didn't take much work for him to shoot me an instrumental of one or two of his tracks for me to figure out the best ones that would work as a transition for the audiobook, and for me to splice it up and put 30 seconds here or there. Like, it didn't take a whole lot of work. It was like my sixth audiobook that I produced, and then he's produced hundreds of songs. So it was nothing. But we're able to collaborate, and suddenly his audiences are becoming mine and vice versa. And we're looking forward to doing more stuff in the future. So stay tuned. So number one, you want to make sure that you have multiple sources of income. And again, I'm eating off the work that he's doing, Purple Fluorite's doing, as his song continues to circulate, as he gets the Spotify streams and the iTunes downloads. I'm eating off the books. I'm eating off all these different things. But I couldn't actually collaborate if I didn't, number two, own the IP. Because if a Penguin or a Barnes & Noble or whomever, whom I've worked with all those guys. This is my 25th book with Build From Now. With all the different setups there, I'd have to go to them during the chaos that's happening in the world right now, which give you ideas as far as when I'm recording this. Get to them, get their permission, because they would own the rights to it. Clear their rights, maybe pay them X amount, including their lawyers or whatever, and then get it over to Raymond, aka Purple Fluorite, splice something up to it, and then they would want a piece of it, I'm sure, or it might have to go through the system, or maybe they can just say, no, Damon, we can't do that. I'm able to move in these particular ways as an independent because I own my IP. So that's number one, multiple sources of income. Number two, owning your IP unless they're giving a mess load of money for it. Trust me, if Penguin or whomever came with a serious bag and they were like, we want all the audio rights to your book, then I would probably let it go. But I also would question why they were giving me that much money. That's for another conversation. So number two, keep your IP. You own it already. Keep your IP unless they're giving you a mess load of money. And number three is to facilitate collaborations. I've talked about this in my keynotes, particularly my Create Your Worth keynote, which became Bring Your Worth. You can look up Create Your Worth on this channel or elsewhere. Create Your Worth by Damon Brown. It's from 2018. It was a keynote at ASJ Austin. Look it up, or go to my website at damonbrown.net and check it out. But my whole point is I talked about this where we get so afraid of sharing and we worry about people stealing ideas that we don't end up creating great collaborations. And I've collaborated with a lot of folks, particularly with Bring Your Worth. I'm collaborating with even more folks now, and I could talk 10, 15, 20 more minutes about that, but I'll spare you the details. But the point is that there are amazing opportunities that you have maximizing and even matching. If you look at it as matching, when people say that if you contribute this much, they'll match it. Consider it like a contribution of your resources of what you do. And as you go into the new year or whatever time it is, think about the network that you have and think about how you can create multiple sources of income with the stuff you've already got. No more one and done. Excuse me. Number two is to keep your IP and use it unless someone's giving you a mess load of money. Think about the Stevie Nicks story, 9 figures or whatever. It should be of that caliber or whatever that equivalent is for where your needs are right now. No judgment if you do that, just make it a conscious decision. I've been there, I get it. Finally, number 3 is to make sure that you facilitate and create these ideas of mutual beneficial opportunities or partnerships, you just call it. And these partnerships, again, like me creating hashtag Bring Your Worth, my theme song with Purple Fluorite, and then highlighting that music into my own stuff, that really helped with both of our journeys, and it raised our stature, and the numbers prove that. Anyway, I hope this was insightful to you as far as the 3 best ways, money making moves you can make as you go into the new year as a bootstrapper, as an independent, as an entrepreneur. And if you want more insight into the resources and maximizing your resources, you can pick up my new book, Build From Now, How to Know Your Power, See Your Abundance, and Nourish the World. If you want to get more insight as far as how to maximize these resources before the book comes, go over to buildfromnowquiz.com. That's buildfromnowquiz.com. There's a free, super short assessment, if you want to call it that. It's more like a quiz. I know people that do assessments, not an assessment, but it's a quiz. It's like 3-4 questions. It'll help you understand what your biggest resources are of this moment and how you can quite literally build from now. Anyway, remember to always bring your worth and to know that you can always build from now. Take care.